Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure.
Look, this is just never-ending, isn't it? And despite the bluster from the Labour government, we're going to smash the gangs, we're going to stop the boats, it's just getting worse and worse. 8,000 since Labour took power, more than 21,000 since the start of the year. Do you trust Sir Keir Starmer to get a grip of this?
No,
Right.
I don't trust him, simply because he's effectively said that he's not going to try to get a grip of it. He's going to smash the gangs. Well, when's that going to happen? He won't, by the way, but that's by the way. There are thousands of people in the EU, some 300,000 who've entered the EU illegally that they're aware of in the past year. There are hundreds of thousands who are in France illegally. So the ones ending up at Calais or on the shores opposite Dover, they're not the only ones. They are really, they are symptomatic, and they are an indication of the huge numbers that are over there and will get here at any cost. More will come, more will die.
Al, I said to Charlie Peters in the last hour, I said, maybe I'm being a bit naive here, but why can't we just send over not only border force and police officers? I'm sure there'll be thousands and tens of thousands of British people who are willing to volunteer to patrol French beaches. Why can't we just patrol the beaches with a good army of people and slash these boats with knives, as the French police are alleging to do now, despite, £500 million a year?
I suspect that the French might say no to that. That's just not realistic. It's not the way we operate. It isn't.
Well, it would solve the crisis, you not think? I mean, why would the French have a problem? They're not going to be paying
I don't know. Ask the French, but they won't do it. It's impinging on their sovereignty. They won't accept anyone. We've been trying for years to have joint patrols with them, and they won't accept that. I'm afraid that this is something that's going to go on and on, partly because our government is not prepared to do anything serious about it, and also because the French, because of the EU, because of all sorts of other considerations, they just will not do what is necessary, and that's stop people, A, from entering the EU, and B, from actually setting sail from the shores of France.
You said you don't think the Labour government will get serious about stopping this. In your point of view, what does getting serious look like?
Getting serious is actually detaining and dealing quickly with all those who come illegally, and then actually getting to the point where we're forcing the French to accept people back. And it's in their interest as well. If we were to send people back to France, then they would stop arriving at the northwestern coast of France to set sail to Britain from here.
So sending people back to France, does that mean intercepting them in the Channel? Does it mean letting them come ashore to Britain first and putting them on a flight back to Paris? What does that look like?
Both, yeah. In the old days, and still what is in theory possible, if they arrive on a ferry or if they arrive by plane and they don't qualify for entry into the country, then they're sent back whence they came, either back to Calais, back to Boulogne, or wherever they came from, or to whichever airport they're set off from. That isn't happening, can't happen, because it's the carrier that we direct to take them back. Well, you're not going to direct a dinghy driver to take them back to France or wherever.
I'll tell you what Australia did. It's common knowledge anyway, but I spent some time in Australia in December, and I spoke to lots of people, Tony Abbott including, about their small boats crisis in the mid-2010s, I believe it was. And they physically stopped boats in the water. They put the occupants in lifeboat-style vessels and sent them back to where they came from or offshore processing sites. When I suggest sending them back or turning them back in the water, I don't mean putting a bit of rope to the end of the boat and then just dragging them back through the channel. You do it properly. Why can't we just do that? Why don't we just ignore the ECHR and declare it a national security threat? This is a national emergency. Why doesn't any government or politician want to get serious about this?
Well, first of all, the English Channel is not the waters around Australia. It just isn't realistic. And even Tony Abbott has said, whether it's possible to do it across the Channel, that's a different matter. If we could do it safely and the French would say, OK, we'll do this together, then it will be possible. But we are a long, long way from that. It just isn't going to happen, and it's really unrealistic to suggest that that's what we should be doing.
Well, Alp, I just, like a lot of our viewers and probably a lot of the nation, I just feel absolutely flabbergasted that a nation which once ruled the waves, Royal Britannia, you know, we conquered the world with our navy, we now can't stop dinghies from their equivalent of Tesco coming across the channel. I mean, it's just frankly absurd. We get bogged down in these conversations about legalities and law and policy and whether the French will do it. When it comes down to the actual facts of what's going on here, people coming in rubber dinghies across the channel to Britain en masse, thousands and thousands as the weeks go by, is just insanity.
I agree. I mean, it's not the nation that we were. Unfortunately, that we were probably instrumental in putting in place the sort of structures that make it much more difficult now than they would have done 100 years ago.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't have happened.
OK, do you ever get the feeling that they just don't care, the powers that be don't care about it all? But, yeah, we'll see.
We care.
Good luck, Labour. Thank you, Al. Appreciate you being for Migration Watch. Now, less than 24 hours after 12 people died crossing the English Channel, more small boats, believe it or not, have attempted the dangerous journey. Dozens of people were seen in Calais this morning charging across the beaches, with French police attempting to stop them making the trip, with provisional Home Office stats showing 317 migrants arrived in the UK yesterday. Well, let's get the latest with our national reporter, Charlie Peters. Good afternoon, Charlie. It beggars belief, really, that after, by any sense, a massive tragedy in the Channel just 24 hours ago, scores and hundreds more would try the journey again the next day.
Yes, Ben, at least 100 have made the crossing today, GB News can reveal, in 3 separate boats that have so far made it into UK waters. From there, they are escorted by Border Force vessels, who then bring them towards Dover for processing. So this morning, we saw a dozen or so arrive in one vessel, then another 50, and now some 65 people have arrived, according to our sources on the ground. We're just showing some pictures of a vessel that we think left this morning. I think that vessel has now arrived in Dover. So the one that our cameras captured at about 9 a.m. this morning, that very dramatic footage of people rushing across the beaches. You're seeing the French gendarmerie there chasing, possibly not at the fastest pace possible, across the beach towards a boat. But that was already in the water, and that's a concern for the authorities. They want to disrupt the process before those small boats enter the water, because once they're in, there is a security restriction on their actions. They have a militarised coastline in the northern France. They have UAV drones, they have night vision goggles, scores of gendarmerie officers scanning the area. But we did see one of those boats making it out. More footage now also showing people chasing on after the boat had already left. This has been an additional risk to the safety of people crossing, because while many dozens pay for those individual trips on heavily laden dinghies, additional people often run forward once it's in the water and try and make it on the vessel without paying the fee. That could have led to the disaster we saw yesterday. Now, I think we can show you some footage of the most recent arrival of Dover captured. Now, these are the men who were on the boat we saw just earlier, which was leaving northern France this morning at 9 a.m. They've arrived in Dover in the last hour, making this another 100-plus day of arrivals in Dover. Now, at least 8,000 people have made the crossing since Labour came to power on July the 4th. We've also had some 21,000 crossings already this year, a little bit ahead of where we were this time last year. And it comes as the French Interior Minister last night said that Britain was to blame for the small boats crisis. And he pointed very specifically at our lax employment rules. That's his perspective, that not enough is being done to clamp down on asylum seekers and those crossing the Channel, working in our industries, potentially through the gig economy and the black economy, the underground labour. Well, that perspective has attracted quite a lot of reaction today. Tony Smith, the former Director General of Border Force, told me that he's not entirely wrong. There are many pull factors towards people coming to Britain. There's a reason why they're taking that perilous journey, possibly because they know that a hotel is waiting for them on the other end and there are opportunities to work. But at the same time in France, there are hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants, many of them working without the right to work. And also, this fundamentally is not about, this is the view of Tony Smith, the activities and opportunities in Britain. Fundamentally, the reason that this is happening is because people are taking the decision to get on the small boats, to give money to people smugglers, and to continue to contribute to that billion-dollar organised criminal enterprise.
Charlie, excuse me for being perhaps maybe a bit naive, but I've seen footage before, as you've just alluded to, of the French police knifing these dinghies and popping them before they launch into the English Channel. Why can't we just send over hordes of Border Force staff, police officers to patrol the biggest points in France, Dunkirk, Calais and so on, to do exactly that en masse? Why are we sending France £500 million a year for, frankly, a job they're not doing very well?
Well, it's £500 million a year. We pay about a third into that operation led by the gendarmerie. So they say that they stop some 60 to 70% of launchings. And as you said, Ben, there's plenty of footage of the French police intercepting and disrupting these operations at the shore, specifically, as you said, by slashing the dinghies with their knives. Now, the organised criminal gangs behind the people smuggling operations, as I said, it's a billion-dollar industry. They're not amateurs. They've adapted to the attempts to disrupt them. A lot of them have moved their craft further down the coast to Boulogne-sur-Mer. That's where the disaster happened yesterday, further away from the concentration of assets in Dunkirk and Calais, which is further north. So it's getting a bit harder for them to deal with it. Also, we've heard compelling reports of migrants now launching their boats and the gangs launching their boats in canals further inland. So the French authorities aren't getting a sight of them until it's too late. They're already in the water and they no longer have the freedom to disrupt those efforts. But GB News sources did tell us this morning that there are 3,000 migrants waiting on the coast, preparing for more crossings. This has been a relatively quiet month in the last 30 days or so. August had choppy weather, poor conditions for crossing, but now 3,000 people reportedly preparing to cross.
Oh, very good. Good news. Thanks for that bombshell at the end, Charlie. Excellent. Look forward to it. 3,000 people.